Hey everybody, it's nice to meet you. Wanted to give an introduction to you of myself, a little bit of an educational autobiography. My name's Nora Demers. Um, my aunt named me because the family ran out of names. Egan was my grandmother's maiden name. I live the four agreements. Most important for me is to always do my best, but also to be impeccable with my word, not take anything personally, and to not make assumptions. So if you spend much time around me, you will probably hear me saying one of those four things at least once a day. Sorry. So my mom's name was Catherine Eleanor Jostet. She was from an Irish Catholic family. The family came over the generation before her during the Irish Potato Famine. She was the youngest in her family of about 11 children. She was a twin. Her mother married her stepdad when they were quite young because her stepdad's had about 8 kids, and then his wife died, and so he got another wife to kind of help take care of the kids and that sort of thing. So you can see some pictures of my mom on the left-hand side, her wedding picture in the lower corner. Mom with some of the children at my oldest sister Peggy's first communion. Kind of a fun picture about what swimming pools look like in the day when my parents had only a few kids. It's a picture of my mom with the 5 girls in the family, as well as a couple of her grandkids. And then mom with my little sister Maymay at the lower, and her gravestone up at the top. It says, "Open the gates of heaven." And on the lower right, you can see my mom giving my sister Anne a big hug one Christmas several years ago. So this is a little bit about my father. His name is Paul Burdett Wilson. He had one brother. They were mostly from Italian heritage. They were raised by their mother, my Grandma Wilson, and orphanages. So on the weekends, Grandma would take them home, but they spent the weeks in the orphanages. We were told that my dad's father had died when they were young. At the funeral for my father, at the memorial service, my sister Peggy brought some information out about from Ancestry that make it look as if my father's father was actually still alive and that they had been born illegitimately. So lower left-hand corner is a picture of my dad when he was 19 years old. He was the first ship into Nagasaki after the bomb was dropped. I'm sure that had a major impact on how he grew up and also how I grew up, but he certainly never talked about it very much. That's my dad a couple years before he passed away in the upper right-hand corner, and dad with my sister Anne in the lower right-hand corner a year or two before she passed away in 2009 from lymphoma. So this is the little bit more of the whole family. In the upper left-hand corner, I'm the middle of the 3 girls. Lower left is the 10 of the 10 kids. I think I was probably about 12 there. Gives you a hint on which one is me. You can have extra credit if you can identify me. Upper right-hand corner is what it looked like in our house when I was growing up. There was just people everywhere watching TV, splayed across the floor, that sort of thing. And then the lower right, as I said, I'm the 8th of 10 children. That pile of kids is lined up in age order, and there's only 7 there. So I was not yet born for that image, but I thought you might enjoy it. More recently, I wanted to just let you know that my mom had 8 children between 1952 and 1962. There were 5 girls and 5 boys. My dad's brother, my Uncle Tony, also had 10 children, 8 boys and 2 girls. So I use that example in my genetics, when I teach genetics in Bio 1, about how chance doesn't mean that there's going to be equal number, but just that for each individual, each birth, that there's a 50% chance of male or female. Those are my brothers kind of cooked up on the side there. So the next slide is about where I grew up. I was middle class in middle America. Both my parents were educators. My father started as an electrical engineer, ended up going to a community college so that his children could have a college education. It was $1 per credit hour. So I was born in the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri. Missouri has 8 states touching its borders, and St. Louis is right along the Missouri and Mississippi and Ohio rivers where they converge. You can see a number of parks that I identified in the area. I spent a lot of time in parks. So St. Louis is perhaps very famous for the Gateway Arch. And on the right-hand side, I wanted to show you a few other pictures. The St. Louis Zoo is one of the best in the world. I went there a lot when I was a child, and it was free and open to the public. The middle picture is the St. Louis Art Museum, also free and open to the public. I did not know when I was younger and growing up in Missouri that all museums were not free and open to the public. The lower right-hand corner is the Climatron at the Missouri Botanical Gardens. I knew it as Shaw's Garden. That one was not free, but we did spend quite a bit of time there growing up as well. I think my love for the environment and for nature and art came from those childhood experiences. So this is kind of an important story to tell that I did not realize until about 5 or 10 years ago, that downstream from St. Louis is Coldwater Creek, and that's actually draining some uranium that was being processed in downtown St. Louis during World War II. So it was to be used for making atomic bombs and stuff. So there was nuclear waste. And nearby in Hazelwood, Missouri, there's actually a landfill where there's an underground fire that's migrating toward this nuclear waste, and it's kind of scary. Very sobering, and apparently a good bit of cancer clusters nearby. The picture on the bottom is Coldwater Creek. I never played in the creek, but it was pretty close to my house growing up. So I've always asked why and how, and I think that's part of who I became in the classroom. John Dewey says experience and education, excuse me. John Dewey says all experiences are what makes your education, and I think that's very important for us to realize it's not just what happens in the classroom. So I wanted to highlight some of the things that I remember from growing up, some of the most memorable assignments. So the first of them was to use an overhead projector to draw a picture of the planet and identify all the different ecosystems on it. So I think that shows how important I thought the environment was from being very young. So pollution studies was another couple of big research projects that I remember studying, making reports about when I was growing up. And what you're seeing here are sewage outfalls from Miami and the Miami area, where they were just, simply dumping wastewater treatment water, shipping it through pipes a couple of miles offshore to get rid of it. Dilution was the solution to pollution. I do believe that several of those pipes are still there. Another story I did, research project, was about mercury poisoning in Minamata, Japan in the 1950s. So it was a factory that had a spill of mercury. They first started seeing unusual behavior in the cats, and then a little while longer, they started to realize that this mercury poisoning was also having an effect on humans. So I say that just to say, my classroom formal education has always been based in the environment and focusing on pollution. So a little bit more about growing up, talking perhaps more about John Dewey's experience in education. I'm pretty sure I've learned far more by the travels I've had with over time than I did in the classroom. As I said, both of my parents were educators that allowed for a good bit of travel. During Christmas, we would come down to Satsuma, Florida, and stay on the St. Johns River and catch crab and go to the beach and see St. Augustine. We also did lots and lots of camping, probably because there were so many children, and that was the best way, most affordable way to see the world. We had some of my most memorable trips were in 1976, going to Europe while my family was in Algeria. My sister and I spent time at an all-girls boarding school in England, and we were also able to go to the USSR. So I'll tell you a little bit about those. My first trip to Mexico was with the family in 1969, so I was about 7 years old. At the time, we had a book called Mexico on $5 a day. I remember when we were packing up to go, we were asked, what should we take to be able to trade? And we were told that baby clothes and toothbrushes and those sorts of things was probably the most valuable things for people in Mexico. And I remember a little town in Mitla. We were up at the top of a hill, and we were in the station wagon and had all of our stuff, and we're trying to trade with the people that lived in Mitla. And there was a lot of things going in and out of the windows in the station wagon where we were trading blankets. We were getting blankets for toothbrushes and baby clothes. We went to Teotihuacan outside of Mexico City. Upper right is Palenque. And my sister Ann was afraid to walk down the inside of it, which is where you saw that jade mask that I'm highlighting there. So that was Mexico in 1969. As I said, in the 9th grade, my sister and I went to Marymount International School in Kingston upon Thames. We went there because there was no high school in Algeria, so we went to a boarding school. My father got a job in Algeria in 1976 to teach engineering because Algeria at the time had aluminum industry, but they wanted to be able to teach their people for when the aluminum ran out so that they would have a more educated clientele, a more educated population. So in the lower left-hand corner, I show you a white picket fence there. My sister and I were probably the poorest of the people at Marymount International. There were princesses there. There was the daughter of Robert Blockley, who was the guy that did the James Bond movies. So we washed that fence in order to earn enough money to go to Lourdes, France. So Lourdes, France, we went with the Handicapped Children's Pilgrimage Trust. You can see a picture of Lourdes on the right-hand side there. Down at below the big church is the grotto where the Virgin Mary was famed to have met with Bernadette. And those are healing waters now. So there's a pilgrimage trust every year from England, and people come from all over the world to get healed by drinking the waters in the grotto. That lower picture is a picture of an underground basilica. At the time we went, it was the largest underground basilica in the world. These are close-ups of the grotto. Upper right-hand corner, if you see all that stuff hanging, those are crutches and stuff of the people who were healed in Lourdes. So I also was able to go to the USSR in 1976 when Americans were not allowed. We went because we were on a group visa. The upper right-hand corner is a picture of a subway in Moscow. So it was incredibly artistic. It was impeccable, very clean, nothing like some of the subways that you see in the States or in other parts of the world. The lower left-hand corner is the Kremlin, and then St. Basil's Cathedral there. The reason I put the one on the right in, when I was there, as I said, it was the height of the Cold War, and we stood in line just like that on the Red Square. There were guards making sure you didn't go out of the boundaries to see Lenin, and you can see Lenin in repose there in the tomb where people walked by to see him. So I wanted to point out the other part of the trip was in Leningrad, which is called St. Petersburg also. It's the City of Bridges, incredibly beautiful. The one on the lower picture is the Hermitage, and that is one of the largest palaces and museums in the world. That was a cute little aside. So in between my formal education, I graduated high school in 1980. And through 1986, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about education there. So I would go to Gardner, Montana. I started going to Yellowstone National Park when I was about 16 years old. My sister Ann had gone up the year before and said, it's real easy to get a job. So I jumped on the Greyhound bus and went to Gardner and got a job in